Right, let's dive straight into this explainer. You know how the internet is always telling you exactly what you need to do with your money? Well, what if doing all those perfectly responsible things is actually destroying your wealth? We spend so much time obsessing over the really obvious financial disasters, but today we're going to look at the silent, compounding forces that literally drain millions from well-intentioned people.
Picture this. Somewhere out there right now, a guy is making a massive budget-busting payment on a shiny new car just to look successful. Easy to spot the mistake, right? Everybody sees it, including him. But here's the wild part. You'd think the guy with the massive car payment is the one in real financial trouble. Yet the super disciplined guy living 3 doors down with absolutely no credit card debt and a totally reasonable house, the guy doing everything right, is quietly losing way more money than the flashy spender will lose in his entire life. And the absolute worst part? Nobody is ever going to send him a bill for it. Now, before we drop these massive numbers on you, we got to establish some strict ground rules for the math. Otherwise, it's all just noise. So we're measuring everything over a standard 35-year working life, from age 30 up to 65. We're assuming an 8% gross annual return compounded monthly, and this is crucial. We are counting mistakes not by the raw dollar amount you spent today, but by what that money would have grown into if it had stayed invested for your entire working life. Honestly, that's the only real way to measure a financial leak.
All right, let's count these down from the cheapest mistake to the absolute most expensive. Mistake number 1, the 401k slider. Let's think about Josh. His rent went up, his car needed some major work, and he comfortably just logged into his laptop one night to slightly lower his 401k contribution. Just making things a little more manageable, right? But by doing that, he walked away from a $212.50 monthly employer match. He probably told himself he'd put it back when things settled down. But let's be real, things never settle down. That one seemingly harmless click, compounded over a 35-year working life, turned into nearly $500,000 surrendered. And he did it without a single conversation. Nobody was hurt the day Josh moved that slider. His paycheck even got a tiny bit bigger. The actual consequence arrived decades later, addressed to a version of him who couldn't do a thing about it anymore.
Moving right along to mistake number 2, the responsible shield.
This trap is tricky because it arrives completely wrapped up in the language of being a responsible adult. Imagine a dad wanting to protect his family, sitting across a desk from a financial pro. He gets sold a $480 a month permanent life insurance policy. It bundles insurance and investment together, promising lifelong protection and a cash value. Sounds great, right? But here's the structural truth underneath it all. A simple $45 a month term life policy would have covered his family for the exact same need during his absolute most vulnerable years, when the kids are home and the mortgage is massive. The alternative isn't going uninsured. It's just stopping paying one company to do 2 totally different jobs.
The monthly difference between those 2 policies is $435. If this father had taken that difference and simply invested it over 30 years, it would have become nearly $650,000. And remember, somehow this is still only the second smallest number we're covering in this explainer. He wasn't being reckless, he was just sold a bundled product when he really should have bought the pieces separately.
Okay, mistake number 3, the driveway trap.
Let's look at Eric. Eric makes a completely reasonable $760 monthly car payment. Now, buying a car isn't the mistake. The guy needs to get to work. The mistake is that Eric hasn't been without a car payment since he was 23 years old. Every time his loan gets close to the end, the dealership calls and he trades it in for a newer model, keeping his monthly payment exactly the same. But here is the mechanical flaw that is wrecking his wealth. Cars lose value fastest in those early years, while the loan balance falls way slower. So Eric is constantly trading in cars when he owes more than they are worth, folding that negative equity into his next loan over and over. The cycle is literally compounding in the exact wrong direction.
The disciplined alternative here, just buying a reliable used car and driving it until the wheels literally fall off, would cost him around $310 a month for maintenance and replacing it eventually. The gap between his endless permanent payment cycle and just owning a reliable used car is about $450 a month. Over a working life, that constant car payment ends up costing Eric over $1 million in lost potential wealth. Over $1 million. And yet, there are still 2 bigger traps on our list that you completely cannot see from the street.
All right, mistake number 4, the smiling approval.
This mistake usually happens in a room where everyone is smiling and shaking your hand. Darius gets a mortgage approval letter from his bank, giving him the absolute maximum number he can borrow. He takes that letter not just as permission, but as a target, and decides to buy a house at the very ceiling of his approved limit. But here's the thing. That approval was just an underwriter's calculation of default probability based on his income and credit. It was absolutely not a calculation of whether Darius could afford to actually have a life. Buying at the ceiling is dangerous because everything about a house scales up. It's not just a bigger mortgage payment. Property tax scales up, insurance scales up, maintenance scales up permanently. This ends up creating a huge gap of $1,150 a month between the house he bought and the house his finances actually supported.
Over the 30 years of that mortgage, all those scaled-up costs on that larger house drain away over $1.7 million of potential wealth. $1.7 million. And the absolute craziest part? Darius is going to spend the next 30 years being constantly congratulated by his friends and family for making such a great investment. Because, let's be honest, nobody throws an intervention because you bought a really nice house, right?
So, the $9 million turnaround. Let's pivot and do something a bit more useful than just counting up everyone's losses.
Take a second to really digest these numbers. If you just correct all 4 of these mistakes, you restore your employer match, you buy term life insurance instead of permanent, you break the endless car payment cycle, and you buy a house your finances actually support, you recover over $2,200 a month. And you do this without starting a side hustle or begging your boss for a raise. If you add that recovered money to a standard baseline $1,500 monthly investment, suddenly you are putting away $3,747.50 every single month.
Throw that into a broad index fund for 35 years. That strict, disciplined action creates a staggering $9.4 million fortune. That is exactly what sits on the other side of just 4 core decisions.
But wait, here is the twist, the invisible wealth killer. You'd really think we could stop there, but there's a massive twist coming. Let's jump back to Tyler, the quiet saver we talked about at the very beginning, the guy 3 doors down who did everything right, fixed all his leaks, and built that $9 million fortune. Well, there's one tiny line on his investment statement he's never actually read. Years ago, Tyler did the responsible thing and hired a pro to manage his money. He pays a standard 1% assets under management, or AUM, fee. He never writes a physical check for it, it's just quietly deducted in the background. Meanwhile, his equally disciplined buddy Marcus invested in the exact same market, but pays just 5 basis points for a broad index fund.
Because that 1% fee is a percentage of Tyler's total overall balance, every good, smart decision he ever made just enlarged the very thing the fee was taking a bite out of. The match he restored, the cheaper car, the smaller house, all of it made his balance larger, which meant the fee took more. Over 35 years, that 1% fee cost him over $2 million. It's literally the largest number in this entire explainer. Proving a really harsh truth, Tyler wasn't punished for making mistakes, he was actively charged for his own discipline.
All right, let's wrap up with your quick action plan.
We're definitely not going to leave you hanging with just the bad news. Here is exactly how you fix this today, ordered from the easiest task to the hardest. Ready? Take 10 minutes today to open up your statement and just check your investment fees. Seriously, check them. Next, spend a single afternoon reviewing your life insurance to see if it's term or permanent. Then, log in right now and make absolutely sure you're maxing out your employer match. When your current car loan is finally up, give one firm refusal to the dealership and just keep driving the car. And finally, purposefully make the mindset shift to buy less house than the bank tells you you can afford.
Listen, 4 of these wealth leaks are single choices you can just fix once, put behind you, and forget about. But that invisible 1% management fee, that's a choice you are actively making today, tomorrow, and every single day after that for as long as your balance grows. The data is entirely clear on this. So the only question left for you is, are you going to let a bill you never even receive quietly drain millions of dollars from